Hey everyone, it is Bridget here from Bridget's Healthy Kitchen. Hoping you're well, hoping you are safe. Thank you for joining me in the Healthy Kitchen tonight. We of course are cooking something healthy. We are making a sugar-free tomato sauce or tomato ketchup, depending on what you call it. In my part of the world, well, in my household at least, it was called tomato sauce or tea sauce. But I know as well, depending on where you're from, it can be known as tomato ketchup. Is there much of a difference? Not really, because when you kind of break down what tomato sauce is, that wonderful condiment, it's kind of tomatoey, of course, it's a little bit sweet, and it's also a little bit spicy. So we're taking all those elements, and hello to Debbie joining us tonight live on in the cooking class. We're making, a fairly simple tomato sauce. It's definitely not hard. But one of the things I love about it is just the fact that there's no sugar, because traditionally tomato sauce has a lot of sugar. So does barbecue sauce, steak sauce, all the sauces are loaded with sugar. We've of course taken that out. In fact, there's no dairy, there's no gluten, and this particular recipe is also vegan friendly as well. So very exciting, and it is simple to make. And what you'll find is it's fairly reasonable priced as well. So come on down to my bench. I want to show you guys what we have in store. The first thing that we need to consider when it comes to making tomato sauce, tomato ketchup, is the tomatoes that we're using. Now, as you can see here, I'm using tinned tomatoes, and I suggest you do. And you know how cheap they are. You can buy a really good quality tinned tomato for $1, $1.20 a tin. And for this recipe, you're going to need 4 tins of 400 grams. It's 14-ounce tin, so 4 times 400 grams of whole peeled tomatoes. Now, ideally, you want to go for an Italian tomato. Now, the reason being, if you can sort of see that on the tin there, you can kind of see they're oblong shaped. So these tomatoes are specially grown to have a higher flesh to seed ratio. So they are literally the ideal tomato for making tomato sauce. And those types of tomatoes are called Roma tomatoes. So they were grown specifically to have way more flesh, just a few seeds in the middle, and they're also quite easy to peel, but go with the tinned. I'm going to send you guys, deliver you guys a recipe for this on Bridget's Kitchen tomorrow if you want the PDF, and I'll throw in a link just in case you want to make yours from fresh tomatoes. But I suggest you go tin. So you need 4 tins. And what you want to do is you want to empty all your tins out and just into a bowl or something like that. So empty all your tins out, juice and all. You do not want to throw away the juice. And what you're going to be doing is you're literally going to be weighing off the tomatoes as you go. Because what you want is you want to have more tomatoes and less juice. As I was saying, we're not going to throw away the juice. I need some tongs. I'm tongless. We're not going to be throwing away the juice from the tomatoes. We will be using that, but we want to just make sure that we've got more tomatoes than anything else. So pop your bowl onto your scales, and what you're going to be doing is you're going to be adding the tomatoes first into the bowl. And you want to go for a total of, and there's 4 cans that I have emptied in here, but you want to go for a total weight, if you can, as close to 1 kilo, which is 2.2 pounds, as possible of tomatoes. So you kind of weigh off or separate the actual whole tomatoes from the liquid, and have a little look down at your scales and see what the weight is. You want about 1 kilo. You may find that tomatoes in your 4 tins are less than 1 kilo, which is 2.2 pounds. So you just might have actually come to like 10 grams under 1 kilo, which is a really good tomato to liquid ratio in those tins. I'm just adding another 10 grams, and it's taken me up to that 1 kilo mark. As I was saying, 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds. That's the first thing you do. Now, when it comes to this liquid, remember, don't throw that away. We will definitely be using that later on. So you take your 1 kilo or 2.2 pounds of tomatoes straight out of the tin. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be adding, I'm going to put it back on the scales. We need our scales today. We're going to be adding in some apple cider vinegar. I'm using organic, raw, unfiltered, because it's just got more minerals, more vitamins. So we're going to be putting into here 150 mils, which is 5 fluid ounces of raw, ideally unfiltered or with the mother in it, apple cider vinegar. And by the way, it's going to be very vinegary smelling in your house. Trust me on that. It's an interesting aroma when you make this. So 150 mils of our apple cider vinegar goes in there. And then the next thing that we're going to be wanting to add is we're going to want to add in some sweetener. And the sweetener that we're using today, of course, is sugar-free, but we are going to be using some of our fiber syrup here. So I'm going to push that onto 0 again, and we're going to weigh off same amount of apple cider vinegar as we're adding to fiber syrup, and we're putting in 150 grams of our fiber syrup. Now, of course, this means we are going to get a lovely sweetness from the fiber syrup. But the other really good thing about this, of course, is we're going to be getting a prebiotic as well. So we've got a really healthy tomato sauce already, and we haven't hardly done anything. Now, you can be using, at this point, I'm going to add some spices. If you want to, you can add in I've got sugar-free mustard, my favorite Dijon mustard, which is May mustard. I'm going to be adding in 2 teaspoons of that, heaped, because I love mustard. But you can also use mustard powder here. And if you do have mustard powder, it's a little bit stronger than this particular variety. So if you're using mustard powder, I suggest you just go with 1 teaspoon of mustard powder. We're also going to be adding in, believe it or not, a bit of cinnamon. I know, weird, right? But you never knew that putting a bit of cinnamon, half a teaspoon is all you need, in there is going to add such a lovely flavor to our tomato sauce. As well as that, I'm putting in some allspice. Half a teaspoon of allspice goes in there. And then I've got just a plain mild curry powder. Oh gosh, it smells so good. And when it comes to the curry powder, we're going to be adding in the recipe, I say 1 teaspoon. But if you like, you can also add an extra teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, and it gives it a really nice, lovely balance, which is what we're after. So we've got all those in there. The next thing that we want to do is we're going to take up our little machine. I've got, well, it's not very little, is it? It feels pretty decent size. This is my hand blender. If you don't have a hand blender, you can also use a food processor. And you just want to blend everything up. Not too fast, because you don't want to get tomatoes squirting all over the place, which obviously can happen. And you want to blend it till it's pretty smooth. It doesn't have to be extremely smooth. It just needs to be pretty smooth, if that makes sense. All right, so that sort of consistency. I know, yes, it's very watery, but we're going to do the cooking very soon. So that's the next stage. If you're doing it in a blender, you may need, depending on the size of your blender, you may need to work in batches as well, because you don't, like I said, don't want to get tomato sauce everywhere. So the next thing I'm going to be thinking about is what we're going to be cooking our tomato sauce in. I suggest you use quite a heavy bottomed pot. Doesn't have to be huge, it's just going to tick over, but I like to use either my cast iron pot or just a really heavy base pot, because it's going to give us a lot more even heat distribution when we're cooking. And the last thing that you want is to use a light bottomed pot, and you might get it starting to catch and burn, hence why I suggest you use a heavy bottom pot. Like, so you don't have to use cast iron, but it definitely does help. Right, the last ingredients that we need to add to this is I've just got half an onion. You could use red or white, just peeled. That goes in whole. And then in my little container here, I have 4 peppercorns, black peppercorns, and 4 cloves. Those go in as well. So once you're at this point, this now goes onto the stove, and you're going to bring it to the boil. And then you're going to reduce it down till it's at a simmer, sort of like champagne bubbles. That's what you're after, champagne bubbles. And you're going to allow that just to tick over on the stove, like set a timer for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, you stir it occasionally. You don't have to watch it like a hawk, because remember, it's in a lovely heavy bottom pot, so it's got even heat distribution. But every now and then, come along with a little wooden spoon and give it a bit of a stir. And like I said, there's going to be some interesting smells happening in your house because it does have that real apple cider, obviously, smell to it. So put on your overhead extractor. What I'm trying to say. And then after 30 minutes, and you've had a look at it, it's going to reduce quite a lot. It's going to start to thicken. But I suggest after 30 minutes, set your timer, come back and look at it again. And if it still feels a little bit on the watery side, and that's all going to be dependent on your particular tomatoes that you use. Some tomatoes have more liquid, some have less. So you want it to be quite thick, but not as thick as normal tomato sauce, because that stuff, they add heaps of additives and preservatives. So after that half an hour, have a bit of a check. You may need to put it on for a little bit longer. Here's one I did earlier. I'm going to show you the type of consistency you're after. After about 30 to 40 minutes of simmering away there. That is the kind of consistency that you're after. So you could probably say, yeah, that is about sort of tomato sauce consistency, right? It's not dripping off my ladle perfectly. It's kind of clumping. That is what you're after. So at this point in time, once you've gotten to that consistency that you're happy with, the next thing I suggest that you do is that we haven't seasoned it, right? So let's add some salt. I'm using a mineral salt. So you probably want to add around about, depending on flavor, we will taste the flavor. I'm going to start with 1 teaspoon of mineral salt. As well as that, I'm also going to be adding some sticky sauce. Sticky sauce is going to help with color. And of course, sticky sauce is going to help with a really nice balanced flavor. I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon. So 1 tablespoon of sticky, 1 tablespoon of salt. Let's give it a bit of a stir. Mixing it all through. As you can see, I've still got the onion in there. I've still got the cloves, and the whole peppercorns are in there as well. But you can kind of see, if you look at the pot, you can see where it started. So it started quite high, and as it's been cooking gently, it's reduced down in quantity, because that's what happens when you simmer things, is all the moisture gets evaporated out of it. And as the moisture, which is basically water, is evaporating, it thickens and the flavor intensifies. That's why this step is really important. So you're grabbing your spoon, have a bit of a taste. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Oh, wow. That is so good. Sorry, guys. I forgot how good this was. Doesn't need anything. Wow. Look, if you're from, no, I've got to come up here. If you're from New Zealand, I'm just going to say, what is tomato sauce to you? I grew up with what is tomato sauce, but now I have it, and it's just so incredibly sweet. This is so well balanced. So it is, I can taste those little spices we put in there. It has this wonderful balance of sweetness to it, not too sweet, but then the apple cider vinegar, just that hint of sourness comes through at the end. I actually don't think it needs anything else. Doesn't need any more sticky, doesn't need any more salt. But if you get to this point, and like I said, it all depends on the tomatoes that you use, what you're going to taste once you get to this point. If you feel it needs more salt, sprinkle in a little bit at a time and keep on tasting in between additions. And of course, you also have that bit of sticky that you can add in there as well. Another tablespoon of sticky, if you think you need it, will also go a long way. So come on back down. I'll show you the final step. This is the final step to what we have to do. So the sauce, as I was saying, as you probably guessed from my reaction, is pretty amazing. If you find that it thins down too much, that is when, thickens too much, that is when your remaining tomato sauce comes into play. So if you look and you go, wow, that really thickened way too much, then you can also add your more tomato sauce just to thin it out a little bit. Feel free to do that. That works really, really well. Better than water, because obviously there's more flavor in our tomato sauce. So you can adjust the consistency to how you like it, but to be completely honest, I'm really happy with what I've got there. So then going back up to my ladle, you may have noticed I have put a little jug, and I have a metal strainer or a sieve there, and we don't want to serve tomato sauce with whole peppercorns and cloves and onion. So that's when we do this stage here. Like, I'm using a really fine, what's known as a very fine strainer. So I'm going to have a very smooth sauce, and what you get left in your little strainer will obviously be the clove, which I can see right now. You're also, chances are, you're going to get the seeds, and you're also going to get if there was any skin left on there, there might be a few little random bits of skin that is left on there as well. But you literally keep on doing that, keep on straining it, and using, you know, it's good to have a ladle here because it really helps. You can see just to push that sauce through, and all the stuff that, you know, you may not want gets left behind. Hey, look, if you like a real chunky sauce, which some people do like a little bit of a chunky sauce, all I would do at this point in time is I would pick out the parts that are inedible, which is basically like, where is he? Here he is. The cloves. You don't want to, like I said, you don't want to be eating whole cloves in your sauce, and there's nothing stopping you from actually putting that pulp, that tomato pulp, into your sauce as well. But, you know, if you're making this one for kids, I'm pretty sure kids don't want a chunky sauce. They want it really smooth. That's why this stage is also very important. So, you know, don't rush it. Take your time. Get rid of all the things that aren't meant to be in there, and you know, keep all the things that are. And one of the things that is meant to be in there is flavor, because of course this is a condiment and it needs to be full-on flavor. You know, whether you use tomato sauce because your palate's bored, or it's a habit, or you just like it with certain foods, at least now you have a super healthy version. So of course, once you've got enough of your sauce out, you obviously push it all through the sieve, grab yourself up a really cute sauce bottle, just like what I've got here. Add your sauce to the bottle, more than that, but add your sauce to the bottle and then put a lid on it, and you can keep that quite happily in your fridge for about 4 to 5 weeks. Your sauce will last. So it might even pay that you do double the recipe. I've taught you guys how to use 4 cans. Maybe you use 8 cans and you make enough sauce to last you a month. It is that simple. It is that easy to do. Yet the results, I could drink it. It reminds me a little bit of a Bloody Mary. It's like the best Bloody Mary ever. It's wonderful. And it is so incredible to think that we can make things like this. It doesn't take much effort. You know, the hardest thing is waiting for it to cook for half an hour or 40 minutes. It's really simple to make. It tastes delicious. And as I was saying, I will share this recipe with you guys if you'd like to download it and print it off as a PDF. I'll share this recipe with you guys tomorrow on Bridget's Healthy Kitchen on our recipe page. You're welcome, of course, to print it off and make your own tea sauce at home. How brilliant. Now, one little point for you guys to remember. This recipe, the reason why I've made it today, is our next cooking class, which is on a Thursday. You need tomato sauce in order to make it. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to say any more about what it is we're making on Thursday in a couple of days' time, but you need some tomato sauce, hence why the tomato sauce first. And no, I'm not making chips and tomato sauce, as nice as that sounds. We are going to make something a little bit different. So that's why we're doing this. Join me next time in the kitchen, Thursday night, so 2 days' time. We'll be making something using my homemade sugar-free tomato sauce. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you guys have a pleasant and wonderful evening wherever you are. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you soon back here in Bridget's Healthy Kitchen. Bye, guys.